go. Welcome to the Purpose and Power podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lester, joined by my co-host, Thomas. Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs this conversation. Tonight's episode is Triggered, Not Toxic. In a culture that labels people quickly, we're asking a different question. What if the greatest issue isn't who hurt us, but what that hurt is still producing within us? Tonight, let's have an honest conversation about what emotional triggers, healing, and learning the difference between reacting from pain and responding from peace is. Thomas, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Sunday is
Mm,
always a good day. Yeah, who cannot love it? You love the Lord and you express that if you went to service today, and then it's about family and rest, right?
yeah, that's what it's actually been today. That's been crazy for me because most of the time I'm knee deep doing something, but today I just really took it easy, just enjoying what God has blessed us with, and the as what say trying to turn over a new leaf
Mm.
from a sense of you said, what's the new leaf? From a sense of taking rest for myself and then taking care of myself a lot better. But so it's been good.
Well, excellent. So we mentioned a couple of things we talked about in my opening, emotional triggers, toxic and healing. So let me set the record straight by what the definitions are really regarding these so that we're all on the same page.
Please do.
Trigger. Trigger is an emotional response that reveals an unresolved wound or deeply held belief.
Mm-hmm.
Toxic, the way we're going to define that tonight is toxicity is a repeated pattern of harmful behavior that consistently damages relationships and refuses accountability. And lastly, healing is learning to respond from truth instead of reacting from pain. What do you think about that? What do you think about those definitions? Thomas,
They're
specifically,
good.
what do you think about now that you've heard that and you kind of somewhat agreed to it, what do you think is the difference in the definitions when it relates to being emotionally triggered and being emotionally toxic?
So I mean, you pretty much explained it, but being emotionally triggered means that something has activated a strong emotional response within us. It's that reaction that may involve fear, anger, sadness, defensiveness. We go in defense mode real quick. Hey, what are you talking about? Um, Rejection, anxiety, or desire to be withdrawn, just to say, you know what, I'm done, and walk away. I was laughing tonight when I got this because I was looking at All American. I don't know if you watched that show. It's one of the very few shows that I watch because number one, it's about young people. Number two, they keep they keep a lot of the today stuff to a minimum, even though they do have a lesbian and gay stuff inside of it. But most of it is pretty pure, not a lot of profanity, but they get after some real issues. And so, uh, but emotional toxic and toxicity is one of those things that is running through the whole the whole little show. You find toxic behavior, emotional toxicity among the characters. Um, and so, let me get back. I went off. Um, and the intensity of the emotion may be greater than what the present situation appears to warrant because the present moment has touched something deeper, something that really hit them hard. And that's the challenge, being emotionally triggered because it's bringing up something, and it might not be really connected. Um, so what do I mean by that? So you you're walking with your, I'm gonna say beau, your friend or your boyfriend or your, I don't know what to call this space where you're in between the dating part of it and the, hey, we're going to take this a little bit further. So in the mix of that, y'all are jiving, everything is driving, and then the brother says something like, I really love the way that you move your hair, and he may rub his hand down the side of your face in an affectionate manner. But that's the same thing that your ex or another person that you really thought y'all were going to get together and get it on did. And all of a sudden, you were just flashed out of that moment. And now you're like, okay, I'm done. And the guy's sitting there like, what just happened? Because it just totally turned the moment and changed the whole thing that was going on. You still want to be there, but you can't be there because the emotion that you felt changed everything within you. And so it drives a whole different thing because now you're torn. Now, being emotionally toxic is totally different. Whereas the toxicity in Maryland not having an emotional reaction, it's about a pattern. It's about a pattern. So it's about you not trying to get away from it, but you're actually trying to hurt the person. And it's constant. I mean, it's like, and you think it's just fun, that person's be like, hey, did this. And you can do that same thing. And then you're going to be like, what are you doing? Don't touch me like that. And every time he touches you, what part of don't touch me do you want? Baby, all I'm trying to do is no, and it's toxic because it's trying to harm, it's trying to put control, manipulate, punish, or confuse. And that confusion it becomes an emotional drain because it's like walking around on eggshell. Somebody said, I heard this today, and I was like, and it was in the show. Actually, I think it was in the show. It's like walking on thin ice coated with eggshells. And I'm like, wow. And the challenge was, and the way I put it when I put it in my mind is, you always hear stuff cracking, but you don't know whether it's the ice or the eggshells. And when you get comfortable that it's the eggshells, then the ice fall off from under. And you're drowning because it's not something that you truly did, but it's something that they're emotionally reacting to, and you don't know what it is. And you can't figure it out because it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. And it's always like somebody trying to throw you off your game. I had this one lady a long time ago, and I don't know why this came to mind, but it was like, I was like, you know what? I'm just trying to get to know you and figure you out. I'm just trying to know you, who you are. And the person said, you will never know me. I will always change. I'll never let you get that close. What am I supposed to do? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So a trigger person is a person that's working through the issues. They will say stuff like, I realize whatever just happened affected me deeply, and I need to understand why. I need to understand why that happened because that shouldn't have happened with you. Toxic person, you made me act like this. And therefore, I'm not responsible for what I said or did. That's on you, brother. You did this. And you're sitting there like, what did I do? I don't know what I did. All I did was, So you said it best when you said, triggers explain why reaction may have occurred, but they do not excuse harmful behavior. I hope that kind of broke it out. But toxic don't try to figure it out. They just know that it happened and it's up on you. It's not, it's a trigger becomes something that person is working with you to work out. A toxic person is saying, it's not about me, it's about you. You figure it out. You did it.
Got it. So,
Does that make sense?
yes, you're capturing it. So the triggering is the response, and the toxicity part is the behavior that refused to change or be healed.
So both of them are
Excellent
response.
capture. Yeah, you captured it in the show that you talked about and how people are responding there. You gave several examples of how that could be. Definitely, like, for example, that could be really common, like the way someone touches you or talks to you or phrases that they may say to you that they don't know that you've heard them in the past from other people that you've had experience with, whether in a positive or negative way. And that can bring back the memory of it, either the pain or the thought or whatever have you. But how you respond is where it can become really toxic, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the trigger, is just that it reminded you of, or it's like a deja vu moment, or like, oh my gosh, nobody better ever talk to me like that. Whenever, if somebody ever does this, like, that's why I'm careful not to say this, but a lot of people have gotten into, the phrases that they throw around, toxic masculinity, all these different things, red flags, green flags, yellow flags, and all the things. But what they'll be doing without thinking about it is they will actually be creating triggers for something that's not an issue based on listening to the wrong people or having the wrong interpretation, because it could totally be making sense that day in that way for a certain set of situations or circumstances. Then you might find
Mm-hmm.
yourself in that set of circumstances or situations, but without actually exploring more, like, why does that particular person respond to you in that way, or why do they move a certain way? You'll be labeling everybody the same. You'll be running from everyone. You won't be in a relationship with anyone. So I think there's just
But
the accountability and the balance of saying, not just so quick to reveal or to say or label someone or something as toxic. We need to actually know if what we're dealing with or encountering is really unhealthy, or simply the trigger reveals something in us that hasn't healed yet.
and that's a powerful thing that you just said. Because the one thing that we have to understand, what is the difference between, and I also believe that's just like you said, labeling, but when you said labeling, you trigger something else, because it also means labeling relationships.
Right.
Because many times we put relationships in the wrong basket. So a friend versus a friend with benefits,
Hmm.
which we shouldn't have, but we have a friend with benefits,
My God.
versus a boyfriend. I mean, versus somebody that you're striving to build a relationship with. I would say boyfriend, girlfriend, versus a person that you're trying to build a life with,
Right.
which is before you build that life, which is fiance and fiance. So each one of those levels have different levels of toxicity and emotional triggers because of the different levels that you go.
Right.
You can't fly a plane at ground level the same way you fly it at stratosphere level. There's a lot less air. It takes a lot more power. It takes a lot more determination. And it takes a lot more engineering to fly at each level. In relationships, you got the same way. At every different level, there's a whole different level of emotional triggers, and there's a whole different level of toxicity. Because just because you got rid of it when it was not a problem when you were a friend, don't mean it's not going to be a problem when you get to be looking at boyfriend or girlfriend, or fiance, or even friend with benefits. So at every level, we always say in Christianity, for every level there's a different devil.
Mm.
And so, for every level of relationships, there are different pieces that we have to deal with, especially when we start talking about triggers. Because unless you one of those, you know what, I can't even say that. I was going to say, unless it's your first love, but you know what? We all have first loves. And who are they? They're our parents. And those first loves of our parents, our first emotional triggers, that's where they come from. Our parents, our friends, things that we have done in the past, things that and believe it or not, things we have seen done to others, all create those emotional triggers. And we got to figure out where they are. And we have to understand where they are because, you know, you might have seen your one of your friends get um, emotionally scarred because they you know, when we're coming up they always that ugly baby, right? You know, we all had those times in our lives when we were not the most handsomest or the beautiful thing out there, and people called us all kind of crazy names. I know you were never like that. I know, you
Right,
know,
there's no.
but you know, and when we were coming up, kids are mean. They are ruthless because they ain't got no filters, especially among each others. And we still some people still have triggers about what that image was because you know people say, you know, hey buck teeth. Oh man, you go sideways because somebody called you buck teeth or something. But you know, now I'm gonna stop talking because I want to hear you because you said something else. We talked about being emotional triggered and emotionally toxic, but then you also talked about emotional wounds and the process of healing inside of that. So can you help me understand the difference between an emotional trigger and because you talked about the wounds and you talked about the wounds also. So what how does that work with between the emotional trigger and emotional wound? I just want to hear your thing on that.
So the trigger, you're responding to something directly from that reminds you of the past. Like something that wasn't something that wasn't probably a good thing. Okay, let's just use your example with the rubbing the hand on the face. If you were a
Mm-hmm.
person that had been assaulted, sexually or otherwise, touch for you is going to be something out of this world unless you're really in a healed place. So you might have gotten used to hugging particular family members or close friends you've been friends with for a long time that you feel safe with, but now you're trying to venture off into getting to know this person, and you're like, "Hey, I'm real sensitive about touch," but you don't really get into it, and they just happen to grab you up, hug you, and squeeze you tight. But the person who used to like assault you as a kid used to do something similar, like, "Come on, give me some sugar" or something like that. That would that would solicit an emotional trigger for you. Whereas an emotional wound would be like what you're describing from childhood. Okay, you never got over it because now it's just a self-esteem problem that you haven't dealt with versus something that is a lifelong journey for you to kind of reconcile. It's not your fault. Like the wound you can heal from, and you can go get straight teeth. You can get a great body, you could get a BBL, you get all kinds of things and make sure that you work hard over the next 10 years from that high school reunion and go and be the most successful person in that room. You might still be insecure underneath, but you compensated for all of that by dealing with success being the way you fight back to that. So, for example, I
So
had a
can
friend who was like, he liked a certain girl when we were in school at grade 9. He was really into this girl. He really liked her. He even liked her more so at 10th grade. Over the
mm,
summer, he got fine. He got healthy. He got skinny. He cut his hair. He was looking a different kind of way. And he really was just into this girl. I mean, she was a cutie, but But that was his why, even though the benefits of him, reducing his caloric intake, eating healthy, healthier choice, his hair looked really good. But you know what though? I would tell
Mm.
you that that is an emotional wound because today he is married to a man.
Okay,
Mhm.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So these things will develop. The wounds, you allow them to develop and blossom and transform into something else. And the triggers would just be reactions every now and then, or certain situations you find yourself in that expose wounds that hadn't healed, but are way more difficult to deal with, which you can choose to be emotionally toxic in your behavioral response, or you can do something completely sideways and different. No one would have ever told me that he would be into the boys in high school.
Wow.
But
Wow.
he's with the
That's
boy,
scary.
he's with the whole boy today.
That's scary.
Very.
Uh,
But you know what though? He still has faith. I mean, still got a faith relationship. Now, how they reconcile it, I'm not quite 100% certain. But he had it then. He still has it now by all accounts. But it's just, it's the wildest thing.
okay. So can a person be triggered without realizing their underlying wounds?
Yes. So until they are put in a particular situation or circumstance to encounter that, they won't know that that even exists. You can be in a relationship that doesn't go well and things go toxic and they go left or right, or maybe it's some abuse of some kind, maybe emotional, doesn't always have to be physical or psychological or whatever have you. And you think you're fine because you're outside of that relationship. The relationship is over, right?
Hmm.
And you attribute all the things that you went through and all the behavior patterns and everything is good because we're not together anymore. And I'm over a relationship, and now I'm in another relationship with somebody that I really love and somebody I really like, and it's going well and it's going great. And then something that they do, say, it doesn't even have to be in that relationship. It can just be in
Mm.
some part of your life that all of a sudden you just encounter that, and you're like, oh man, I thought I was healed in that place. For example, you know what they say, just use yourself. Use yourself. I'm using myself for
Use
example.
yourself. Use yourself.
So for the husbands that I had in both situations, I wanted to have a baby, right?
Mm.
At some point in the horizon of the relationship, but not in the time frame under which we're married. It was always later. We can just have children
Mm.
later. Okay. Now both of my ex-husbands, they have children,
Mm.
right? And I got to a place where I've always kept the idea of children and families in a marriage and not anything outside, right? So
Okay.
it's an emotional trigger for me when people only want to, they want to skip to their little past my faith or what they know what God said to me or what journey I've been on to say, oh, well, girl, you're 48. You didn't even worry about having no kids. I know it must be awesome and fabulous and fantastic for you to not have any children, not knowing
Mm.
that's not off the table or that's not something I desire, right? And
But
so
not to have
I,
children is something
so
you
I
desire.
learned to distance myself with regard to my belief and what I know the Lord wants from me. And yeah, it's optional. I could say, Lord, I know you promised me that, but I don't, you ain't got to do that. I know I'm in that place. The Lord give me what I'm asking for. But they don't know the history. So I was fine in the context of relationship because I knew that it was reserved for me. Being a mother was under the auspices of being a wife. It's not going to be the kids. And I know everybody's preference is different. I'm just speaking for me. And I'm saying, okay, cool. Now, I never said that I couldn't adopt, sperm bank it, or whatever combinations, or that I couldn't find a man and really get a child. I mean, all these things are possible, right? But
Hmm.
the trigger, I mean, this is just explaining again the difference between emotional trigger and knowing that you got a wound. The trigger for me would be when people didn't know and they would bring it up. Or Mother's Day was like hard for years.
Mm-hmm.
And people will always think that because they see me when it's nieces and nephews, they'll think that, well, how's your son doing? Or how you know what I'm saying? Like they wouldn't know that it would be a trigger because I had dealt with it.
Mm-hmm.
But why was it a wound? It was a wound because I would go so far, 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, and then I get to this point or place in my life, and I would be having this one-on-one conversation with the Lord, and things wouldn't be looking right. They would be looking up, and I didn't have this person in my life. And then it would become the wound because of the way that I said I want it done, the way I think that God always wants it done. As you get married, then you have children. And I'd be like, this man ain't even here yet. Like, I'm done. I'm over with. Don't even worry about it. We just don't even want to get married anymore. We won't have a baby anymore. We want to have this. See, it's an uncovered wound because I will only feel that way when I was stressed and pressed about not having achieved the relationship. So then I would have no prospects. So that would mean that the whole idea of being a mother would be so further off. And it'll only be like that because people in my family or friends or something would be like, when you gonna have some children or something, right? And so they would activate the trigger and then it would expose the wound. But I wouldn't know it
Mm.
wasn't there because I love my life. I feel like I'm fulfilled in life. I know that I'm able to do things that a lot of people are not able to do and go places and all the things. And I have success that I never asked for and that God blessed me with.
Mm.
But at the same time, in between time, right? I was okay with the weight. And then other people would come and trigger the weight.
Mm. So why, I'm just asking, why is it important to identify the wound instead of trying to control the reaction? And I'm asking that because you understand the wound. So why would it be more important to because you talked about how you reacted or how you now respond because you understand you have the wound. There's a wound. So why is it important to know what those wounds are?
It's important for you, for me, and other people
Uh-huh.
to know what the wounds are because then you can control the trigger and then it doesn't become toxic.
Okay,
So
that's
if
fair.
I know the wound
Hmm.
and
So
I
you're saying that a
and I put the
wound,
balm of Gilead on it, like the Lord says, then when it's brought up where it would be emotionally triggering for me, I don't have to worry about it because I can just stand on business and be like, well, I know what God said, it don't really matter. And I don't have to explain it to anybody. I can be like, well, thank you. Yeah, one day when I get married, yeah, I'm gonna have a family, but it's not a trigger. I mean, it doesn't have to trigger me. It can be triggering, but I decide.
uh-huh.
I'd have to decide. But see, I know the wound is only there. I don't have to pick at it like a scab, right? That's the difference between a wound and a cut. Okay. Wound takes time and you got to nurture it. You have to do a whole lot more to take care of a
Mm.
wound. A cut will heal, it will scab over, and you're done. And that scab becomes a scar and you're good because it's healed
Uh-huh.
underneath as well. But a wound is something you got to, it's going to take time to heal. There's going to be something a lot more involved than just a band-aid and some neosporin. But as long
So,
as I know what the cure or what the treatment is for the wound, and I'm applying that treatment, aka my
mm,
faith, aka, you know, my relationship with the Lord, aka knowing God's timing is the best timing, I would just allow that triggering to just come on over and have its way. And it's just not gonna happen. Just not.
okay. So with that, I like what you said because this is powerful. This is powerful because many times, and what you just said was you got to take time with a wound.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm getting from what you're saying, the triggering may get our attention, but the wound is what trigger may get our attention, but the wound actually needs our attention more because the wound, if not taken care of properly, can become toxic.
Absolutely.
Is
Infected.
that is that
Toxic
is that
is
what?
infected. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. That's the
Because
infection is a toxicity, right?
okay,
And
and
so that's
so
why you have to protect that wound.
and that's the challenge that we have is that many times I believe that we don't seek the healing of the wound. We keep pulling the scab off, and we keep the scab on, and we work on healing the scab and not the wound. Because if the wound is deep, the wound has to be healed from the inside out, not the outside in. So many times we try to put the scab on it, put the Band-Aid on it, and then throw it in the closet so that it'll heal itself. And we put this Neosporin on it because what this Neosporin does, it helps seals the wound so the wound can close itself up and heal from the inside out.
Mm.
I mean, outside in instead of the inside out. And so what happens is over time, as you know, I have, and I use this, actually it becomes my example. I stepped on a nail and it went right through my foot. And there was a whole lot of stuff inside, but we put, my grandmother got it, opened it up, poured some alcohol and some whiskey and all kind of stuff in it, put some stuff on it, and we bandaged it up and everything was fine. Right?
Yeah.
But we never tried to get everything out. So every now and then I can move the wrong way, and that wound on the inside, even though everything on the outside is sealed, that wound, if I step the wrong way, that wound actually, bam, it pops. And I feel it. And I'm like, ooh, that hurt. But I automatically know what happened. I know where it was because the same pain I felt when I stepped on the nail. But now when I do it, I don't almost go to my knees. My body reacts to it and says, oh, that wound just opened up. And I keep moving. A little bit slower, but I keep moving. That's the challenge that we have with, now, if that would have been toxic, I could have lost my foot because it could have came up gangrene or something like that. But it's healed on the inside. It's healed on the outside. And it's somewhat healed on the inside. But the wound is still there. The scar is still there. So we have to understand where that scar and how that's healed on the inside, because in order to understand your relationships, you have to understand where your scars and where you're truly healed and where you still have a wound. Because some things, even though you have found yourself and you have healed yourself in one sense, and it goes back to, like you're saying, knowing yourself. And we've said so many times on this podcast, be to your own self, be true. And you have to know where your toxicity is. You have to know where those wounds have become gangrene or they're rotten because you just refuse to take care of that emotional wound. Well, emotional or spiritual wound. Some wounds are spiritual. Some people, as soon as you say, "Oh, he's a good Christian," people are like, yeah, she's a godly woman," because they've had that godly woman kind of talk, a godly woman person that turned out not to be so godly. Because it's not because they're not godly; it's because they have toxicity that has not been properly taken care of. And I'm just going to say this, oh, God can handle this. I'm going to give it to God and God is going to handle it. No, you got to handle it. You got to handle it by giving it to God so that God can handle it. And then you got to handle yourself to leave it alone so that God can do what God does. And you can move on with your life and allow your life to be better because you're not carrying around that toxicity that came from a wound, spiritual or mental or emotional. I mean, and we have to identify which one it is, because each one of them carries its own cost and own weight.
I think it's worth saying this. Everybody mostly knows what to do with a cut, right? They gotta go get the first aid kit.
Mm-hmm.
They get a cute little band-aid. They got some little ointment in there. Oh, rub
Mm-hmm.
on it. And a cut, you know the difference because when you touch a cut, it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
So our natural instinct with a cut, it's always to dress the cut with the band-aid covering, right? And then it
Yeah.
heals because it's covered. But a wound, that one you usually will let it like be open so it can
Mm-hmm.
breathe because it takes longer to heal. And a wound doesn't hurt because somebody's touching it, right? They don't see the pain, all the hurts underneath.
Mm-hmm.
All they see is what's on the surface. It's the same way
Mm-hmm.
with people emotionally. If you have a disagreement with someone, that's like a cut. But if they betray you, they reject you, or they abandon you, they've now created emotional wounds for you.
And it might be more than emotional. It might be a mental, or it might be
Well,
spiritual.
yes. But
Depends
see, a
on where.
disagreement, yeah, because in that way, because think about what we're saying. You can heal from a disagreement, I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I was wrong. Boy, betrayal, you can't come back from that. And even if you do, they'll never trust you the same. So it's
You
not even that.
can.
They
You
took a
can.
wound and they just decided that, you know what? I'm gonna give you one. I'm gonna treat it like it was a cut. Okay? But they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna remember that you cut them. But if they
But
feel like
that's
you abandon them, reject them, or betray them, those are wounds that are going to require healing. That healing is going to require time, understanding, and a whole lot of things. And those are not going to be things that you can do quickly. Like I said, with a disagreement, you might a day or a few hours, you can come back, you say you're sorry, give a hug, give a kiss, and you moving on. But that's the difference. Okay, that's the difference between how you can be triggered. Okay, when you get mad at each other, you have a disagreement, and you come back and
mm-hmm.
apologize,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you'll even make little jokes. You was real mad at me right then. You were just, you was really crashing out over that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, but if they do anything more deep than that, they almost, how you ever been in a situation or a relationship with somebody who actually goes silent on you, they won't talk to you for days. That ain't never
Okay.
somebody you love, to be somebody. And that's the way they take it. Or they ain't talking to you again, or might ghost you right there. That's how deep you hurt them. And
Okay.
their instinct is to cut you off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their way of,
So
you know.
and so it's just like fear. Fear is healthy when you can walk through it.
All right.
Fear becomes unhealthy when it stops you from doing the things that you know you need to do. Um, Even toxicity is triggers are just that. We can allow triggers to be stopping and breaking points, or we can allow triggers to be warning points. Uh, Toxicity is a trigger. It has a trigger. Understanding what that trigger is before we become toxic is a lot more important than actually becoming totally toxic.
Mm.
Because if we understand the trigger, then what I want to say is we can control the level of venom we let out of ourselves. Uh, because some people might need to feel a little bit of toxicity just because that's where that relationship is. But then the other person also know where you are. And oh, that's arsenic right there. I can't taste that. But now they understand where you are and what they need to work with, or what they have to deal with, or what kind of things that they can go back to God and say, okay, God, I see some things here that are very dangerous for me, that are very deadly for me. Is this something that I need to pursue? Is there a balm in Gilead that I can put on this toxicity that makes this that makes this a lot less painful? But we have to. But that's something that's the power of understanding the spiritual toxicity. And this is me. I strive to approach a person spiritually first, because we are spiritual people in a physical body. Everybody have different bodies, but they all have one spirit. They have different masks, but they have one spirit. So the challenge that we have is looking at a person and getting to that spiritual level where we understand who they are. We might not we understand where they are, but we don't understand who they are or what they are. And so now we get to understand the spirit part of the person before we get all captivated, mesmerized, or thrown off or by what we see physically. One of the most ugliest person I've seen was one of the most beautiful people I ever met. And her spirit was a lot more worse than the person themselves. Then you can feel the spirit oozing off of them. I had a brother the same way. Great person. But the moment you got close, you start feeling the toxicity. But God, at that point, God wanted me to work with that person and just deal with that person. And so God allowed me to see beyond the toxicity, which was a covering, just to keep everybody away. And when you got past that, you found a person that was hurt, a person that needed healing, a person that needed love, a person that needed clarity to understand what love truly was. What was a brother to them versus what was a friend, versus what was an acquaintance, versus what was a associate. And, and when that person started looking at that, and I said, listen, bro, this is me. You're an associate first. You're never a friend. And he says, well, I'm looking for a friend. I said, well, that's not something you look for. That's something that grows over time. If you want to be my friend, you first have to be an associate. You first have to be an acquaintance. Then we go into a friendship, because I'm not going to let you into my inner circle until I understand that you're worthy of that. Because that helps you prevent triggers. Because if a person's automatically, now for me, a trigger is a person, I'm your friend, man. I'm in to the end. I don't know, I haven't known you for 2 or 3 days. No, you ain't my friend. And people look at me like I'm crazy. I said, no, bro. There are certain people that'll be my friend. I'm 57 years old. I have 4 friends in my life. 4. The rest are associates and acquaintances. And I guarantee you, my acquaintances are a lot more than my associates. Because associates means that there's a little bit of, there is some relationship. There are some things I feel. We have a knowledge of who we are, and we have set boundaries within that. But acquaintances, those are people that, they can run in circles, and I know who you are, I know your name, but that's about it. I'm not trying to figure out anything about you. When we come into contact, I'll bring you into the associate circle, but I'm kicking you right back because I don't need what you got. Or you don't need what I got, or you just don't fit that bill. But we have to be very, careful about that which we consider, acquaintances, associates, our friends. Then, to me, then we don't get as toxic because we have less people rolling into our lives. Then we have less triggers. Mm-hmm. Because as we look at our associates and we look at our friends, then they become a lot. They know our triggers, and as they get to know us, they know our triggers, and they don't want to hit those triggers. Now, acquaintance, they don't care. They run out, they run in, and that's it. But that's where I think for us, we have to be protective so that the triggers are not hit. And the toxicity, because we start protecting where our wounds are. We start protecting and looking at where people can actually touch us, because we are God's children. And I'm making an assumption that, all on this podcast and all that look at this podcast are Christians. And I'm making that assumption. Yes, I am. And in that, I'm saying we all are God's children, and these are God's temples. We should be controlling what comes in and out of this, mentally, spiritually, and physically, and emotional. And with that, we should know our triggers, to know ourselves, and to know God, to know ourselves. And as we grow into God, we get to know ourselves a lot better, because God shows us where those things are inside of us if we are listening and if we're paying attention. I know that was a whole lot, Eric. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I actually like that you brought up that, because basically what you are also saying is about having discernment, not expecting to give people access as a friend when they're really an associate, and knowing the difference between the two, because you're now deciding without discerning what difference of access level they should have. You won't be equipped to stop them from creating a trigger or a wound. This is what it is, right? So
Yeah.
it all works together. So here's a question for that as we come to a close on this important conversation. If every emotional trigger is trying to tell us something about ourselves, what would you say for you personally has been your biggest trigger, and what has it been trying to say that you've been refusing to hear?
All right, let's put that another way. Give that to me in another way.
Here's a different way to ask that. Would you rather spend your life avoiding the people who trigger you, or become so healed that they no longer have the power to? Because you might not think that you have any emotional triggers, right?
So
But people will reveal something out of a situation without you recognizing it in the first place.
So this is what I think. I don't think I'll never be in the point that I am so emotionally healed that I can't be triggered.
Amen.
Okay? Because I'm still alive.
Right.
And I'm still living. And I'm not living in a bubble. I'm living among the world. And I'm going to be triggered. And it goes back to, it's not, I strive to heal my wounds, spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Right.
Because healing them in all areas. And so many times we will heal physically, and we will heal mentally, but we don't heal emotional. See, the mental stuff you can work with. The brain works. That brain is an amazing thing. But the brain can easily divide and change make. It would take the difference between cube dice and chip dice. They're both ice. They both do the same thing. Well, one is a lot bit bigger than the other, and one has a different function. But they're still ice. It's still water. It's still the same thing. That makes sense?
Right. Yes.
But, a brain can do that, but emotions can't. Emotions would take water and make it ice. And they can take that same water and make it steam. And when that happens, it actually affects your mental, your physical, and your spiritual. Because it makes them all whatever that emotion becomes. And now it takes the whole fight between your mental and your spiritual to actually make put the emotional in check. Am I making sense? I'm going south on you.
Yes. No. I'm with you on it.
And so we have to make sure that we heal at the emotional level and the spiritual level and the mental level. to ensure they're all in check. Because there's moments that we can tell our mental and can say, you know what, that's not the same thing as what you just had. That's water. Yes, it is water. Now, what are we going to do with that water? Let's take it down to its basic substance. I'm not saying make it H2O, but I'm saying making it water. And then allowing that water to be what it needs to be. And, if that water is ice, then you can make it water. If that water is steam, you can still make it water, because you can either bring up a situation, or you can heat up a situation to make it water, or you can bring ice down a situation to make it water. But at the end of the day, you make it water. You deal with what you want. You determine what you want to do with that water. And that's what we do through Christ. That's what we do through our Holy Spirit that is within us. It makes it what it is, and not what somebody else has created it to be. And
Right.
so we're always going to have triggers, I believe. But how we allow the Spirit inside of us to handle it, and what has control of us. Some people are emotional people, and their emotion runs wild with them. And some people are physical, and their physical runs wild with them. Some people are mental, and the mental run wild. But we have to have that spiritual. We have to have that. We have to develop that space inside of us, where the mental, the spiritual, and the emotional are in sync, so that neither one is running away with the other, so that you can truly determine what a situation truly is. And then you control, as we always said in the military, you control the narrative. You control the narrative, and you don't make the narrative what it's not. All right. I think I'm going to stop right there.
I love it. So tonight we begin with a simple question. Are you reacting to the person in front of you, or a wound from your past? I hope you'll continue thinking about that long after this episode ends. One of the biggest lessons from tonight is this. Not every difficult person is toxic, and not every emotional reaction means someone has wronged us. Sometimes our triggers reveal places in our hearts that God is still inviting us to heal. Healing isn't about pretending the wound never existed. It's about refusing to let the wound continue writing the story of your life. So the next time you find yourself reacting, don't just ask, what did they do? Pause and ask, what is this revealing about me? That single question could become the beginning of your healing journey. If tonight's conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or gave you something to think about, we'd love for you to like, subscribe, and share the Purpose and Powerful podcast with someone who needs this conversation. Join us next time as we continue the journey together. Until then, stay rooted in purpose, pursue healing, and remember that every healthy relationship begins with a healthy heart. Good night, everyone. Good night, Thomas.
Good night.
Thank you for your help tonight.
Okay.